Hello, my listeners. In this episode, I want to speak to you on a very important question. A question that many individuals tend to ask. And this question is, why Shakespeare? Why is it that every time you're studying literature, whether it is in the school system, primary level, high school, college, university, why is it that Shakespeare always come at the center of discussion? So why Shakespeare? Why is it that people always turn to Shakespeare whenever there is a literature class, or whether there is a literary conference or discussion? So why Shakespeare? The answer is simple. Shakespeare has utilized almost all the literary devices we need to know whenever time we are studying literature. You see, when you study literature without looking at literary works already out there, then you will not have a clear understanding of literature. For example, if you want to study figure of speech, just picking up a dictionary and looking for the word alliteration or allusion or diction, that don't give you it will give you the semantics of the word, meaning the meaning of the word, but you will not get the application. And so within literature class, because Shakespeare's works, his body of works, are so well done. He deployed those literary devices so well. You can see how easy it is to use Shakespeare when studying literature. Because Shakespeare, when you think about all the literary devices, and I'm talking about literary devices like personification, figures of speech, like personification, metaphor, simile, diction, imagery, all of these can be found within Shakespeare, his body of works. When you also think about speech, you will notice that Shakespeare has utilized all the different speeches, different types of speech within his works. You're talking about, when you think about dialogues, monologues, soliloquy, apostrophe, and aside. All of these can be found within Shakespeare, his body of works. So it is easy, you can see why it is easy to simply turn to Shakespeare whenever you are studying literature. Not only that, but Shakespeare also covers a broad area, all the areas of study within literature. I mean, think for example about staccato dialogues. If you look at some of Shakespeare's works such as Macbeth, you will see that in his work, Shakespeare ensured that he within the dialogues of the characters, he have staccato language, staccato dialogues, I must say. So why Shakespeare? Because Shakespeare works are a treasure trove of all the literary devices that you would want to apply as a potential writer, a potential author or a potential playwright. And mentioning playwright and author, I just want to make it clear that Shakespeare was never an author, and he has never written one single book. Shakespeare was simply a playwright, someone who had written plays and directed them. But today, writers from all different fields, journalism, freelance writers, those who just write blogs, those who write books, and those who write plays, and those who write scripts for movies can turn to Shakespeare, because they will find within his work methods that would be difficult to find otherwise, or even if you know those methods by just looking at the semantics of them. For example, just go into a dictionary and look for the word soliloquy is not enough. But if you turn to Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet, and you read Juliet, for example, Juliet, the scene with Juliet on that balcony, and when she say, Romeo, oh Romeo, where art thou, my Romeo? And she went on to talk about the Montague and the Capulets, and those are just names. You know, if you look at that, and you get more from it, because you get not just the meaning of a soliloquy and a monologue, but also you get how it is applied. So turning to Shakespeare instead of simply a dictionary or just a website article will give you more. Shakespeare works can be described as works of artistic and intellectual value. And that is why, for the hundreds of years that he lived, that he has died, since he died in the 1600s, and for the hundreds of years that he has died, his works continue to survive. So when Shakespeare wrote a play, he ensured that he did it at his best. You know, he put within his work not just say a simple dialogue, or just a simple monologue, or just a simple description of a character, but he put within his plays many of the literary devices that some of us authors would never use. I had written many of my books, and I don't use some of the speeches that Shakespeare used. You know, the monologues and the soliloquy. My recent book, entitled Clause 20, in this book I decided to add a monologue. And the reason why I add a monologue was because I remember that Shakespeare didn't just write. He doesn't just simply write. He enriched his plays with much of the literary devices so as to impress the audience who watched his plays, including Queen Elizabeth I and King James I. So when you're writing, always adapt the same approach as Shakespeare. Don't write a simple story. Try to include many of the different literary devices. Focus a lot on imagery. Focus on when you're giving speech to your story. Include monologues. soliloquy, not just dialogues, because these things help to broaden the human experience. What is it like? What is the purpose of speaking to yourself when a character speaks to his or herself? If you think about Juliet on that balcony, what was Juliet achieving when she was just there on the balcony speaking to herself? She was expressing her emotions, something that many of us would do otherwise by doing it through just dialogues alone. So Shakespeare, and not just Shakespeare alone, including Charles Dickens and other names. There are other popular names, but they are not as famous in the same way as Shakespeare. For example, R.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter, you will find in her work, the Harry Potter series, that she has not deployed much of the literary devices as Shakespeare. And you would not want to turn to Harry Potter if you want to study tone and mood and different types of speech and different types of literary devices, because she's famous. Harry Potter is famous in a different way from, say, Hamlet or Macbeth or Romeo, or any of the other plays from Shakespeare. So if you're going to study literary device, if you're going to study literature, you want to turn to the works that are rich with the different literary devices. So the question is, why Shakespeare? Why Shakespeare? Because Shakespeare's body of works are rich with all the literary devices that you would want to know. You're not going to just get the meaning of, say, monologue. You're going to see how it is applied. And Shakespeare didn't just apply a monologue, it just drop a monologue into a scene. He applied it. So you learn not just this meaning of the word or the meaning of how a particular device is used, but how it is applied. So go ahead. If you want to study literature, Shakespeare is absolutely the right source for you. You can read any of Shakespeare's plays on the internet, and nowadays people read Shakespeare plays. When in the lifetime of Shakespeare, plays are not meant for reading. You can go now and you can buy a book with Macbeth or a book with Hamlet, and you read it and you enjoy it. But a play is really for the theater. A play is a dramatic work. It is meant to be seen, to be watched, not meant to be read. But as we know over the years, through the effect of Shakespeare's words, many people now read Shakespeare's work rather than go into a theater and watch it. And I think it is because a lot of theaters are not in the world nowadays. You find a lot of people would prefer to go to a cinema to watch a film rather than to go to a theater to watch a play. But so if you're interested in Shakespeare, go ahead. And the question is, why Shakespeare? Because Shakespeare body of work are rich with all the literary devices you want to know. Not just knowing them, but how to apply them. Thanks for listening. And remember, you can check out all the other episodes. And please have a pleasant and good afternoon. Goodbye.